Good evening, everyone. Did you know that there's only 4 days until Christmas? I am so excited, and I hear that there's supposed to be more snow this evening. So, for you tonight, I'm going to read Peter Rabbit, A Winter's Tale by Beatrix Potter. Here we go. Underneath the root of the biggest fir tree in the forest was a sandy burrow. Peter Rabbit lived there with his mother and sisters. One wintry afternoon, Mrs. Rabbit sent Peter out to collect firewood. "Stay close to home, dear," she said, "and look out for Mr. Todd." Peter nodded and ran off into the forest. Among the trees, Peter met his cousin Benjamin walking with his father, old Mr. Benjamin Bunny. "Can I help Peter collect firewood, Father?" Benjamin asked. "Very well," said old Mr. Bunny, "but don't stray too far. They say Mr. Todd is about." Needless to say, neither Peter nor Benjamin paid any attention to their parents' advice. Soon they were deep in the forest. Up on the wintry slopes, rabbits were sledding. "That looks fun," said Peter. "Let's join them," said Benjamin. "We can collect firewood later." Peter and Benjamin threw snowballs, made icy slides, and then had a ride on the sled. The sled went a bit too fast, and Peter and Benjamin landed in a heap at the bottom of the hill. "Hey, watch where you're going," said a grumpy voice. It was Tommy Brock, the badger. He carried a sack over his shoulder, and something inside was moving about furiously. "What have you got in there, Mr. Brock?" asked Peter. "That's none of your business, little rabbits," said Tommy Brock. "You just want to watch out for that old rogue fox, Mr. Todd." Peter and Benjamin were thinking of turning back when they met Mrs. Tittlemouse. She seemed quite upset. "Why, Mrs. Tittlemouse, whatever is the matter?" asked Peter. "My babies have gone," she sobbed. "Someone has taken them." "Tommy Brock!" cried Peter and Benjamin together. "So that's what he had in his sack," said Benjamin. "Don't worry, Mrs. Tittlemouse. We'll find your babies." Peter and Benjamin scampered quickly along the track that Tommy Brock had taken. Soon they met 2 gentlemen rabbits out for a stroll. "Please, sirs," asked Peter politely, "have you seen Tommy Brock?" "Why, yes," replied one of the gentlemen. "We just passed him. He was having an argument with the gamekeeper cat over there." "But do take care, little rabbits," said the other gentleman. "Tommy Brock may not be a danger to you, but Mr. Todd is out and about today." "We're not afraid of Mr. Todd," said Benjamin, and they set off. "Mr. Cat, do you know where Tommy Brock went?" asked Peter. "If I were you, I wouldn't give the time of day to that thieving old badger," scoffed the gamekeeper cat. "But since you asked, he went up to his house among those trees." "By the way," said the cat, "I think someone's following you." Peter and Benjamin looked back along the path. There was no one there, and all was silent in the still, white forest. Peter and Benjamin crept into the trees by Tommy Brock's house and hid in the thick undergrowth. Tommy had just reached his front door when he heard a faint rustling and sensed he was being watched. "Those pesky rabbits must have followed me," Tommy Brock snorted as he rested his sack on the cold ground. He got ready to pounce. Nearby, Mr. Todd wrinkled his nose. He could hear something moving and he could smell rabbit. He got ready to pounce. With a great roar, Mr. Todd and Tommy Brock both jumped forward, but instead of catching 2 frightened rabbits, they found themselves face to face with an unexpected enemy. There was a terrible howling and snarling. "Time to go," whispered Peter Rabbit. He and Benjamin grabbed the sack between them. They ran away, slipping and sliding down the hill. Tommy Brock and Mr. Todd glared at each other. Around them the wind blew and the snow swirled. They peered at the little rabbits running away towards the distant light. "Well, I think we've lost them," Tommy Brock said. "It's a freezing night. Why don't you come inside for a glass of my dandelion ale? Mr. Todd gazed at the black, shadowy trees. You know, he said, I don't mind if I do. And so the two old enemies shook hands and went together into Tommy Brock's den. The little rabbits didn't stop until they came to the place where Mrs. Tittlemouse was waiting. They opened the sack and the baby mice tumbled out, rather shaken but otherwise unharmed. Oh, how can I ever thank you, cried Mrs. Tittlemouse. You are so brave, going into the forest to rescue my babies. It must have been very frightening. Oh, it was nothing, gasped Peter. We should go now, panted Benjamin. My father will be getting cross, and that is very frightening. The little rabbits ran all the way back to the big fir tree. Two anxious figures were waiting at the entrance to the burrow. Peter, Benjamin, where have you been? And where's the firewood you were supposed to collect? Scowled old Mr. Bunny. Mrs. Rabbit was so pleased to see the two little bunnies she forgot to be angry. At least you are safe and sound, and thank goodness you didn't see Mr. Todd. Peter and Benjamin smiled at each other. She turned to old Mr. Bunny and said, It's such a cold night. Why don't you and Benjamin come in for a cup of chamomile tea and a slice of my best plum cake? So the rabbits went into the warm, cozy burrow and ate and drank and laughed until it was time for bed. And above them in the snowy forest, the wind had dropped and the fir tree stood tall and strong and calm, sparkling in the silver moonlight on this magical winter's night. The end. Enjoy and Merry Christmas.